guys, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to The Wandering Reader. Today I'm going to be doing my favourite autumn reads. So I'm going to recommend some books that are perfect, in my opinion, to read during the autumn. I feel like this is a perfect time to film this video because today in the UK it is pretty cold. I mean, we're not talking about winter cold, but since September has hit, I just feel like the temperature has dropped quite a lot. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not freezing. It's I think something like 14 degrees today, but I have not been able to walk around the house without this big old cardigan on. So yeah, I thought, well, perfect opportunity. The weather started to turn, it's starting to get a little bit colder, and started to get to that time where you want to cozy up with a lovely cup of tea and a great book. And so I thought I would film my recommendations for the perfect autumn reads. Yeah, so let's just get straight into it. The first book that I want to recommend is The Final Journey by Gudrun Porswang. I think that's how you pronounce that. This is a World War II novel. I think it's a children's book, maybe, or it's saying it's teenage fiction, so YA. And I read this quite a while ago now. But this tells the story of a girl called Alice, and she has been hiding in the basement of a house in Germany. Is it in Germany? I can't remember. I think it is in Germany. She's been hiding in this basement of this house in Germany, and one day her and her family are found, and they are put on this train, herded onto this train like cattle. She doesn't really know what's going on. She doesn't really understand why they've been taken. She doesn't understand why she's on this train, and has no idea of where she might be going. And basically the novel tells the story of the train journey, and it's absolutely brilliant, really, really good, a really important YA novel in my opinion. Definitely one that, yeah, I would recommend a lot of teenagers read. But the reason I'm recommending it for autumn is because autumn sort of generally gives me this historical fiction vibe, and more sort of darker stories with darker themes, and this definitely falls into that category. Plus I tend to like reading about the First and the Second World War in the autumn for some reason, so that's definitely one that I would recommend. The next book that I want to recommend is The Watcher in the Shadows by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. He's got quite a few other books apart from his very famous The Shadow in the Wind series, which I talked about in my last video. So this is a very creepy and dark book, which, you know, if I think about autumn, I tend to associate it with sort of books that are a bit creepy, especially because Halloween falls into autumn. This is about a girl and her brother and her mum, and they have recently moved into a new house in a new town. I think from what I remember, that's because their father has recently passed away, or I think that's the case. So they've moved, and her mother has taken up a job as a housekeeper at this really kind of grand house down the road, and the person that owns this grand house is a toy maker. And this is told from the perspective of the girl. I can't remember what her name is. Does it say it on the back? No, it doesn't. I can't remember what her name is. Anyway, it's told from her point of view, and, you know, being in the story, she's sort of investigating this new town, and she meets a boy and that sort of thing, but they soon discover that this toy maker and his house, there's more there than meets the eye, and this was very, very creepy. Really good sort of creepy tale. It's not like overly creepy, but it will sort of make you a little bit creeped out, basically. I don't really know any other way of saying that. So yeah, I think this is perfect for autumn in that sort of sense. Next up, I want to recommend Stoner, and this is by John Williams. And this is the Vintage Classics edition of it. And this basically tells the story of William Stoner, and the book is a bit like a biography. It tells the story of his life basically, and he's not a particularly likeable character, but I did find myself sympathising with him and quite liking him in some regards. He makes some strange decisions, but then some strange and unfortunate things happen to him. The reason I'm putting it into my autumn reads recommendations is because it's what I would describe as a very quiet book. There isn't an awful lot of plot to it. There's plot to it, there's a storyline behind it, you're going through his life and things like that, but I would say this is much more character driven. And William Stoner is a very quiet, odd man. And yeah, this is very, very hard to describe, but I just think that kind of quiet sense to it makes it the perfect autumn read for me. And I really, really enjoyed John Williams' writing. I thought it was brilliant, and I've heard Russell from Ink and Paper blog talk about John Williams before and say that, you know, he really likes his writing and you should read other things by him, and I really do want to read other things by John Williams in the future because I did really enjoy his writing. So yeah, I would definitely recommend Stoner by him. Next up, I would like to recommend The Poppy Factory by Liz Trunell. This is another historical fiction novel, and it is another novel set during the war. This time it's the First World War, and what I like about this particular one is that it's told from the point of view of a woman. And at the beginning of the novel, this woman, her name is Rose, is waiting for her husband to come back from the war now that it's over. And when he does come back, he has a life-changing injury. And so it's about, what we're learning is what it's like to sit at home and not know where your husband is or what's happened to him, and that kind of real worry and anxiety for him. But also what it's like coping with the fact that your husband has got this life-changing injury and that he has completely changed since he's come back from the First World War, and just how she copes with that really, and how a lot of women had to cope with that, and seeing it from that different perspective was really interesting. I'd never read a novel set during the First World War or just after that was told from a woman's perspective. So yeah, awesome because of the whole historical fiction thing and the whole, I like reading novels about war during autumn, so I would really recommend that one. Then I've got here Notes on a Scandal by Zoe Heller. Again, when I think of autumn, I tend to think of books that have got a bit of scandal to them, a bit of mystery, a bit of a twisty, dark tale, and this is certainly the case with this one. I think a lot of you will know what this is about already, but just in case you don't, the basic synopsis of this is that we meet a teacher who has an affair with one of her students. And the story is about what happens with that and the consequences of it and things like that. There is a particular character in this that is very, very creepy. But also the story itself is just full of intrigue and scandal, and yeah, it's really dark. And I quite like Zoe Heller's writing, so it's lovely and short as well, and I would really, really recommend the film. The film is just as creepy and dark and full of intrigue, and yeah, just perfect for autumn. This is a bit of a strange one, this next one, but when I was looking through my shelves earlier, I spotted it and I thought, yeah, that's definitely autumn to me. And it is Chocolat by Joanne Harris. Now, yeah, you probably find it strange because of what this book is about if you've read it. If you haven't read it, this is the story of a woman who her name is Vianne, and she moves to a new French village. I think she's moved from somewhere else in France, but I can't remember. I read this an awful long time ago. And she opens a chocolate shop. And the novel is about sort of her interactions with other villagers, and you know, the different characters and the things that happen in this village, and the consequence of this new chocolate shop being there, and what influence she has on the village and things like that. And I just think it's just so delicious. And I think, you know, when I think about what I do in autumn, you know, snuggle up with my dressing gown on, a cup of tea and eat some chocolate, and yeah, this novel is just perfect to read during that time, and I really loved it. And then the last book that I want to recommend is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. Mainly because this is a good book to read around Halloween time. I am not in any sense a big fan of horror. I haven't really read anything in the horror genre. I don't remember really, and I hate horror films with a passion. Just the whole thing about being scared is just not enjoyable to me in the slightest. I kind of enjoy being slightly creeped out by things and by things being dark, but being totally scared, no, just doesn't appeal to me in the slightest. So I think The Graveyard Book is a perfect alternative to reading something really scary. And that's because this is about a little boy who is brought up in a graveyard. So his name is Nobody Owens, and he's known to his friends as Bod. And he lives in a graveyard. And so I'm not going to tell you the circumstances of how that came about, but he's brought up by loads of ghosts that live in this graveyard. And it's just so imaginative and gripping. It's just such a lovely story. I think it would be perfect to read around Halloween if you, like me, don't like being scared and aren't particularly a big fan of horror novels. This would be a great one to read. I really do like Neil Gaiman's writing. I'm a bit scared to read some of his other stuff, I think because some of it is a bit more complicated, but this is more sort of YA and a bit more up my street. I've read Stardust by him as well, which is a bit more of a fairy tale-esque. But yeah, love The Graveyard Book. So there you go guys, they were 7 books that I wanted to recommend as great autumn reads. I'd love to have a chat with you in the comments below. What is your favourite autumn read? Recommend something to me. Have you read any of the books that I've mentioned? I'd love to have a chat with you about those in the comments below. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.